Rudo is an ugly, broke, and friendless boy who spends most of his time rummaging through trash in the rich part of town. One day, he notices a rich lady discard a trash bag with a perfectly good doll in it, and he wants it. So, he heads down to the trash collection site and sneaks into one of the garbage rooms to start looking for any valuables. However, he's a bit too sloppy with his approach, as he gets spotted by one of the guards. The people here take their trash very seriously, because the guard immediately runs in and draws his gun on Rudo. Only authorized personnel are allowed inside, and once he realizes Rudo is a trash raider, the guard sounds the alarm to call for reinforcements. Rudo doesn't plan on sticking around, so he jumps into the trash chute and climbs back up to escape. But the lockdown sequence has already been initiated, and just as he's about to get out, the front gate seals shut. The guards eventually catch up to Rudo, and as soon as they have a clear shot, they open fire without hesitation, just to keep him from looking through their trash. As the bullets head straight for him, Rudo moves so fast that he's able to dodge them point blank. The guards, unaware of his speed, genuinely intended to kill him. He slips through one of the open doors and runs into the loading area while the guards continue shooting. At one point, a bullet grazes his arm, but he still manages to scale the wall and escape the trash collection compound. The guard continues to chase him, but Rudo hides in the sewer system until the coast is clear. He doesn't understand why they're willing to go so far to stop him from going through trash when he isn't hurting anyone. Soon, word spreads and people all over the city hear about the recent trash raid. They're appalled at the idea of the dirty tribesfolk rummaging through their discarded belongings. In this city, people are divided into two sections: the city dwellers, who live in a clean and pristine part of town, and the tribesfolk, who live in the filthy part. The trash raid is a hot topic here as well, and everyone already suspects Rudo, especially since he's busy fixing up the junk he collected last night. A few moments later, Rudo is confronted by his friend Chiwa, who yells at him for going trash raiding again. The city folk are strict about trash management, so there's no telling what they'd do if they caught him. Rudo understands the risks, but he doesn't think it's fair that the rich constantly throw away perfectly usable items. Selling the fixed junk helps him cover his living expenses. Just then, a group of guys show up and start insulting Rudo unprovoked. They tell Chiwa she shouldn't hang around a loser like him. Rudo tries to stay calm, but they keep pushing his limits. One of them even knocks over the lantern he was fixing, saying no one would buy something touched by his filthy hands. They then call him the son of a homicidal maniac. That last comment strikes a nerve. The boys explain that these slums were originally created as a prison for criminals, and now, as the children of those criminals, everyone here must behave in hopes of being allowed to rejoin the city. But people like Rudo's father ruined that chance by going on a killing spree. This boy has been talking a lot of for someone within dropkicking range. And that last statement officially crossed the line, so Rudo stares at him with a look that says he's about to snap. Rudo's glare is so filled with animosity that it scares them into realizing it would be a bad idea to keep messing with him, so they slowly walk away. Once they're gone, Rudo silently picks up the lantern they kicked over, being used to ridicule for no reason. To his surprise, Chiwa is still standing by his side. She tells him she believes he's a good person, and that's the nicest thing anyone has ever said to him, leaving him unsure how to react. Chiwa then notices the toy Rudo fixed and loves it. She's impressed. He found something so cute in the trash and restored it. The whole reason Rudo went after the doll was to give it to Chiwa as a present, so he's happy she likes it. Before he can explain it's a gift, Chiwa's mother shows up and tells her it's time to go home. Chiwa says goodbye to Rudo and leaves with her mother, leaving Rudo disappointed he missed his chance to confess. After that, Rudo heads home, but as soon as he steps inside, he finds Recto standing there with a wide smile. He had been spying on Rudo earlier and repeats his failed confession word for word. Rudo gets flustered and yells that spying on private moments isn't cool. But Recto changes the subject, wanting to talk about the trash raid stunt Rudo pulled last night. Recto admits they are poor, but not so poor that Rudo should risk his life searching for junk. Rudo insists it's not risky since he's never been caught before, but Recto points out he was spotted last night and nearly captured. He understands Rudo is trying to repay him for everything he's done, even though they're not related by blood. But to Recto, Rudo is his son and owes him nothing. Recto found him abandoned as a baby and took him in, always treating him as family. Just then, Recto notices the wound on Rudo's arm and asks if he got shot. Rudo tries to deny it, but it's obvious. Recto tells him to roll up his sleeve so he can treat it and change the bandages. Once done, he warns Rudo to stay away from the trash site, because next time, he might not be lucky enough to get away with just minor injuries. Rudo says he's fine. Compared to the wounds his biological father left him with, a scratch isn't a big deal. The mood shifts at the mention of Rudo's father. In this city, major crimes are punished with immediate death by being dropped into the pit. Rudo's father was executed this way, and Recto doesn't want the same fate for him. Rudo's hands have been pitch black for as long as he can remember, and he sometimes suffers crippling pain from them. People look at him with disgust, but Recto was different. He gave him gloves to help manage the pain, and Rudo has treasured them ever since. Recto then tells Rudo he'd better make a move on Chiwa soon, or someone else might. Rudo doesn't want to talk about it, but while they're bickering, a mysterious masked man is outside, staring at their house ominously. The next morning, Rudo practices smiling because Recto told him it would make him more approachable. After a few minutes, he decides he's just plain ugly, so smiling won't help. Still, he wants to give Chiwa the doll, so he heads to her house. On the way, he thinks about the pit, a massive trash dump where the city throws both its garbage and criminals deemed useless to society. Public executions happen often, and the slums were built on the city's edge to remind the tribesfolk that stepping out of line means being thrown in without question. When Chiwa shows up, she says it's awful how people are sent to the pit so often. She doesn't want that to happen to him. She understands he disagrees with how the rich waste perfectly good items, but if he keeps putting himself in danger, it's only a matter of time before he's caught. Rudo laughs, saying Recto told him the same thing last night. Chiwa responds that's probably because Recto loves him just as much as she does. Rudo keeps laughing until he realizes Chiwa just said she loves him. Chiwa, flustered, tries to explain she didn't mean it in a weird way. Sensing this is his best chance, Rudo holds out the doll and says he got it for her because he thought she'd like it. Chiwa is overjoyed and says she'll treasure it forever. This went far better than Rudo expected, so unsure how to react, he runs off before his ugly face makes Chiwa change her mind. Now that he has finally made progress, Rudo wants to go home and tell Recto all about it. However, as he turns a corner, he accidentally bumps into a group of guards from the inner city. They barely acknowledge his existence, walking past him like he's nothing but trash. Apostles showing up in the slums is never a good sign, but right now Rudo doesn't care. He just wants to brag to Recto about his love life. When he gets home and opens the door, to his absolute horror, he finds the masked man with a sword plunged into Recto's chest. The masked man pauses for a moment, surprised by Rudo's sudden appearance, then pushes the sword deeper. Refusing to let Recto die in front of him, Rudo charges at the man, but in less than a second he's slammed against the wall, barely able to move. The beating is so quick that Rudo doesn't even remember how it happened, and the masked man barely considers him a threat. Convinced Recto won't survive, the masked man gets up and begins walking away. Rudo yells at him to stop, but when that fails, he tries to gather his strength to chase after him. Just then, he hears Recto's voice. Helping him takes priority over revenge, so Rudo rushes to his side. He tries to assure him that he'll get help, but there's little to be done when you've got a sword in your chest. Recto grabs his shirt and tells him to get out as fast as he can. Before Rudo can understand why, he's suddenly shot in the back with a taser and pinned to the ground by city guards. They accuse him of murdering Recto. No matter how much Rudo tries to explain his innocence, they refuse to listen. One of them even punches him until he loses consciousness. When Rudo wakes up, he's tied to the execution stand, dangling over the pit, while an apostle condemns him for a crime he didn't commit. The people of the slums already disliked him, so many cheer for his execution. Rudo wonders how things turned out this way. He did nothing wrong, yet dozens of people want him dead. He scans the crowd, searching for someone who believes in him, and spots Chiwa. He calls out to her, insisting he didn't kill Recto and asking her to help find the real killer. But Chiwa cuts him off, saying she was a fool to believe someone like Rudo could be more than a filthy murderer. She declares she wants nothing to do with him ever again. Watching Chiwa walk away, Rudo realizes he's truly alone. Just before he's dropped into the pit, Rudo spots the man who killed Recto in the crowd. In that moment, he swears to kill that man and everyone who turned their backs on him. When Rudo next opens his eyes, he's lying in a pile of trash, reeking from head to toe. To his surprise, he's still alive. He always thought the pit was a death sentence. Looking around, he sees endless wastelands stretching as far as the eye can see. Then a loud rumble comes from behind. Turning around, Rudo sees sees a massive trash monster glaring at him. He runs, but the monster calls for backup, and within moments, 2 more appear. Rudo struggles to believe what he's seeing, since when could piles of trash come to life and attack? But the human skull on the ground makes it clear what will happen if he doesn't act fast. Suddenly, the trash beneath his feet gives way, and he falls to a lower level. The impact knocks the wind out of him, and the stench is worse than a moldy gym bag, making it hard to breathe. With nothing but trash in sight, there's nowhere safe to hide. Losing hope, Rudo thinks he's doomed no matter what. Then he remembers Recto's last words and refuses to die, before making them all pay. The people who looked down on him as trash, the cowards who watched as he was thrown into the pit, and above all, the man who killed Recto in cold blood. One of the trash monsters tries to sneak attack Rudo while he's mid-motion, but he's so filled with rage that he smashes the monster's head away with a metal pipe. Meanwhile, on a nearby trash pile, a man spots Rudo across the trash field and becomes curious about him. Rudo does his best to fight back, but the pipe barely damages the monster's trash bodies. He's swatted away and bounces across the ground multiple times. Eventually, he gets hold of a broken stop sign and hurls it at one of the monsters, managing to deal some real damage. Still, the toxic air makes it hard for him to keep fighting. The 2 trash monsters see him struggling to stand, so they charge at him together. Just before they reach him, Rudo grabs a sheet of metal and slices one of the monsters clean in half, causing a huge explosion of debris. He's relieved to have taken one down, but another, much larger trash monster spawns right in front of him. With no choice, Rudo runs for his life. The monster slams the ground, launching him through the air until he lands right in front of the man who had been watching him. Confused by the stranger's presence and still unable to breathe in the foul air, Rudo tries to gather himself. The man, without explanation, picks him up, kicks him across the ground, and then puts a gas mask on his face. At first, Rudo is angry, but once he realizes he can finally breathe, he becomes grateful. He thanks the man and starts asking questions: where they are, what the monsters are, and whether everywhere is like this. The mysterious man tells Rudo to shut up. When Rudo refuses and keeps demanding answers, the man finally snaps back. He explains that this is one of many toxic dumps created by people like Rudo, and he would have told him if he hadn't been so loud. But now, thanks to his yelling, they have to deal with more monsters. He calls them trash beasts, creatures made of garbage that can't be harmed with normal weapons and that react to sound. Energy begins flowing from the man's arms into the umbrella he's holding, transforming it before Rudo's eyes. As a trash monster attacks, the man uses the umbrella to shred it to pieces with ease. Rudo is stunned by the man's skill, but there are more monsters closing in. The man charges into battle, taking down over a dozen trash beasts in seconds. One of the beasts vomits a stream of foul purple sludge, which the man blocks with his umbrella before driving it straight through the creature's head. After the fight, he walks back over to Rudo, removes his mask, and introduces himself as Engine, a cleaner. He immediately regrets taking off the mask. The stench is unbearable. Moments later, Rudo collapses from exhaustion, his body still battered from earlier. While unconscious, Rudo recalls a childhood memory with Recto. When he was young, he came home covered in mud, and Recto asked what happened. Rudo explained that some kids had pushed him into the dirt. All he did was tell them that objects are alive because if you take care of them for long enough, a soul will come and live in them. But the kids just laughed and started picking on him after that. Rudo learned that story from Recto, so he feels bad that repeating it got Rudo in trouble, because stories like those are usually just made up. But Recto does believe that objects can have souls. Rudo lights up after hearing this and asks if that means all the stuff in the room has a soul as well. Recto says anything can have a soul, even the gloves that Rudo is wearing, as long as he cherishes them. Rudo later wakes up and finds himself being dragged across the floor by Engine. He starts yelling, demanding to know why Engine chained him up. Engine reminds Rudo that he's still a total stranger, and there's no way he's bringing a stranger back to base without taking some precautions first. Rudo squirms around, telling Engine to let him go because he needs to get back to the city as soon as possible. But Engine tells him that is impossible right now. The place Rudo calls the city is called the Sphere down here, and it moves around a lot in the sky, making it hard to keep track of. There's also the fact that Rudo can't fly, so he'd never be able to get back up there. There are other factors as well, but the point is, for now, Rudo is stuck down here, so he should just stay quiet and deal with it. However, Rudo refuses to give up because nothing's going to stop him from getting revenge on those pricks in the sphere. Earlier, Engine said Rudo was stuck for now, meaning there must be some way to get up there, and Rudo wants to know what that is. He asked Engine to tell him everything about this place and how to leave, saying he won't shut up until Engine tells him. Engine, sick of the constant yelling, says if Rudo is so desperate to know what kind of place the surface is, he'll get a first-hand lesson. Engine drags Rudo to an old service station with 2 trucks out front, drops him off, and wishes him luck before leaving him to fend for himself. Rudo then spots 5 men staring at him. They think his clothes are strange and speculate that he might be a spirit. To be sure, they ask where he came from. Rudo says he fell from the sphere, and the men remove their masks in shock. They've never seen a living spirit before. They still find it hard to believe he survived the fall, but judging by his face, they think he's telling the truth. Rudo dislikes strangers touching his face, so he pulls away. The men apologize, but say they don't see people like him often. The leader notices Rudo's chains and offers to change them, and Rudo thinks he's being kind, but instead, he ends up chained in the back of their truck. The men joke about how dumb it was for Rudo to trust them without knowing who they are. The leader tells them to be careful because they don't want to damage their latest product. Spirits fetch a high price here, mostly just their bodies, eyes, fingers, and even spirit clothes. But finding a living spirit is rare. The leader says people are willing to pay so much for spirits because everyone on the surface despises them. All they do is dump trash on the people here, poisoning the air and creating monsters. Once people find out Rudo is a spirit, it won't go well for him. He may be tortured, torn apart, or worse. The leader doesn't care either way, he just wants the money. Before selling him, he decides to get some payback by shoving trash into Rudo's mouth. He thinks Rudo has lived a sheltered life in the sphere, so this will break his spirit. But while doing so, Rudo bites down on his fingers, ripping the flesh off. The leader jumps back in pain, but Rudo chews and swallows it. Back in the slums, Rudo was forced to eat trash all the time, so nothing's changed. Even the discrimination is the same. He rips free from the chains, and now all he thinks about is murder. Engine, watching from a cliff, is impressed by Rudo's capabilities. Rudo recalls what Recto told him about cherishing objects, and as he grabs a chain, it begins to glow red. On the surface, there are special people like Engine who can give life to objects, drawing out their full power, and Rudo is one of them. The chain transforms, startling the scavengers. The leader reminds them that if they take the chain away, Rudo can't use his powers. They knock it from his hand, but Rudo grabs a tire instead and beats them all down. The leader is last, insulting him repeatedly, but before Rudo can kill him, Engine stops him. Rudo snaps out of it, and the tire crumbles to dust. Rudo doesn't know what happened, but suspects it's connected to his gloves. Engine apologizes for leaving him, but says he needed to see his abilities. Now that he knows Rudo is a giver, he offers him a deal. He'll tell him everything if Rudo joins him and the other cleaners. But after everything, Rudo refuses, saying, "Nope." Anyway, Engine kidnaps Rudo. It was pretty easy considering how badly Rudo was hurt, so he took him to a doctor to patch him up. While there, Engine tells one of his teammates that he has found a talented kid to join their team. Rudo yells that he never agreed to join Engine's team, but Engine tells him he doesn't really have a choice. He's definitely going to die out there without help. The doctor starts yelling at Rudo too, telling him it was beyond stupid to head into no man's land on his own. With all that toxic air he inhaled, the doctor is surprised Rudo is even alive and says he should be grateful Engine saved him. Just looking at Rudo's face annoys the doctor, so he tells him to pay up and get out. After that, Engine pays the doctor and the two leave together. Rudo is genuinely grateful that Engine is helping him so much, but he's serious about not being able to join Engine's team. He has to get back to the sphere to get his revenge. He doesn't have time to sit around collecting trash or whatever it is Engine's team does. Engine tells Rudo he's free to go around asking for information on how to get back to the sphere. But there are 2 things he should know first. Everyone here hates spirits just as much as the body sellers do. So if anyone finds out Rudo is one, he's done for. This isn't the kind of place where you can get information for free, so asking around won't do much good. Inside one of the trash cities, Engine buys Rudo some real food while they sit at a table. Rudo loves the burger and is a little surprised since he always imagined the pit being nothing but trash. However, now that he's seen it, it looks like a regular city, just with trash everywhere. Engine explains that trash often contains a mix of emotional power called anima. Sometimes, anima gathers into a large mass, which gives rise to trash beasts like the ones Rudo fought. Trash beasts attack humans on sight, but tend to stick to dumping sites, so the city folk rarely deal with them, though there are occasional incidents. It's not easy to take out trash beasts. You have to destroy their cores, which can only be done using special equipment like Engine's umbrella or Rudo's gloves. Ordinary objects can become powerful weapons if anima inhabits them, but only a few people, called givers, can draw out their full potential, and Rudo is one of them. Engine says he's a cleaner who works for an organization of trash beast exterminators, and they need all the givers they can get. He wants Rudo to join him. Rudo asks if Engine will really tell him how to get back to the sphere if he works with him. But Engine admits he has no idea how to get there. He only lied earlier to get Rudo to listen. He says his boss is more up to date on current events and might know a way. Frustrated, Rudo realizes he now has to meet Engine's boss, just to maybe have a shot at returning to the sphere. A few moments later, Engine gets a call and has to take care of some business. Before leaving, he gives Rudo a bag of money and says he can do whatever he wants with it. Rudo is shocked by Engine's generosity and asks if it's really okay to take it, but Engine says it's fine, especially since it's the money he got from selling Rudo's spirit clothes. It's only now that Rudo realizes his clothes are missing, and he's furious that Engine sold them without his permission. But in Engine's defense, wearing spirit clothes around here would only draw unwanted attention, so he was actually doing Rudo a favor. He walks off before Rudo gets a chance to yell at him. While Rudo isn't paying attention, a cat jumps down from a signboard, snatches the money from the table, and runs away. Rudo isn't about to let himself get robbed by a cat, so he chases it into an alley. The cat is too fast for him to catch barehanded, so Rudo grabs a nearby stick to help. It works to pin the cat down, but he doesn't realize the stick belongs to someone, and that someone is not happy. The man accuses Rudo of robbing him. Rudo, confused, says he has no idea what he's talking about. The man, Zenka, tells him he's referring to the stick in Rudo's hand. Rudo can't imagine how an ordinary stick could be so important. Zenka snatches the stick back and explains it's no ordinary stick. It's a vital instrument, and stealing one has serious consequences. He activates it and warns Rudo that even if he is a prodigy, he has no right to touch another man's weapon. Rudo asks how Zenka knows about him, and Zenka explains he's one of the cleaners, and that Engine already told him about Rudo, asking Zenka to teach him a few things. While Engine has high hopes for Rudo, he still needs to learn basic lessons like not taking other people's belongings. Rudo insists he wasn't stealing, he just needed the stick to catch the cat that stole his money. But Zenka isn't interested in excuses. He insults Rudo by saying he must have had a terrible father to think stealing is okay. That crosses the line, because insulting Regto enrages Rudo. Rudo recalls a lesson Regto taught him, that people can't come to an understanding when angry, and sometimes it's best to cool off and see things from the other person's perspective. He realizes that from Zenka's point of view, it must have looked like he was stealing the stick, and he can relate. He'd be furious if someone tried to take his gloves. So he apologizes. The apology works. Zenka deactivates his stick and says he's willing to let it go. He even apologizes for threatening Rudo, saying that as a teacher, he should have stayed calm. Rudo is surprised by how easily the situation was resolved. Zenka extends a hand to help him up and asks what his vital instrument is. Rudo says it's probably his gloves, though he can't activate them at will yet. Zenka begins explaining how vital instruments work, but Rudo is distracted by how different Zenka looks when smiling. He wonders if this is what Regto meant when he said, "You look better with a smile." Wanting to try it himself, Rudo attempts to smile, but it comes out worse than before. Zenka has no idea what he's looking at and thinks Rudo is mocking him. Rudo tries to explain that he's genuinely trying to smile, but his expression makes it hard to believe. On top of that, Zenka dislikes Rudo's attitude toward the cleaners' work, since they risk their lives daily to protect others. He assumes Rudo is doing this for some foolish reason. This enrages Rudo, who remembers Regto's final words about changing the world. He's furious that Zenka would call his goal stupid when it's meant to honor Regto's last wish. Zenka says he tried to keep an open mind, but he can't get along with Rudo, so he's done being nice. Rudo has also had enough, so he grabs something from the trash and prepares to fight. Zanka is shocked to see Rudo use something other than his gloves as a vital instrument, finally understanding what Engine meant when he called Rudo a prodigy. Still, he says raw talent means nothing without the skills to back it up. Just then, Rudo notices that Zanka isn't holding his stick anymore. When he looks up, he sees it flying straight toward him. He manages to dodge, but Zanka rushes in and starts applying heavy pressure. Rudo eventually finds an opening to counterattack, but only grazes Zanka's cheek. Zanka then slams Rudo into the ground and calls him a pathetic excuse for a giver until he notices something on his cheek. To his horror, after sniffing it, he realizes it's poop. Looking over at Rudo, he realizes the weapon Rudo grabbed from the trash is actually a filthy plunger. Rudo has no idea why Zanka is so freaked out, since he's never seen a plunger before, but he isn't about to stop fighting. Even as Zanka begs for a timeout, Rudo keeps chasing him, assuming the plunger must be a dangerous weapon. Proudly, Rudo leaps into the air and swings it at Zanka, splattering filth everywhere. A little while later, Engine returns to check on Rudo. When he finds him, Rudo is standing over an unconscious Zanka, both of them covered in poop. After hearing the whole story in the car, Engine bursts into hysterical laughter. He never imagined Rudo and Zanka's first meeting would end with poop flinging. For Zanka, a spoiled rich kid on the surface, this was extremely humiliating. Rudo is ashamed too, realizing too late what he'd been swinging around. Engine, however, thinks it was a good bonding moment and assures Rudo that Zanka is the best there is at controlling vital instruments, making him a great teacher. Zanka feels honored to receive such praise from his idol. While Zanka basks in the recognition, Rudo notices a pair of boots sticking out of the trunk. Engine says it's just Rio. When asked what she's doing there, she says she wanted to see the new guy in person. Rudo, inexperienced in talking to girls, freezes when Rio starts playing with his hair, saying she likes the color. Even Chao was never this touchy with him. Meanwhile, Engine announces they're heading straight to the cleaner's headquarters. Upon arrival, Rio says goodbye, and Engine takes Rudo to meet the receptionist, Semiyu. She already knows where Rudo came from and has an idea of his potential, but wants to see it for herself. Rudo doesn't understand, so Engine explains that Semiyu's glasses are her vital instrument, boosting her kinetic vision to read details about a person. When she activates them to examine Rudo, her view is suddenly blocked by a black haze when she tries to look deeper. Startled, she quickly composes herself. When Engine asks if something is wrong, she brushes it off, saying Rudo is in good physical shape, has a solid bond with his vital instrument, but lacks skill in using it. He'll need a lot of training to activate it on command. Still concerned by her earlier reaction, Engine presses her, but she changes the subject, pointing out there's poop on the back of Rudo's neck. Engine can't stop laughing, still amused by the earlier fight. Once Semiyu finishes her assessment, Engine says he'll take Rudo to meet the boss. On the way, he explains how the cleaners organization works, combatants, sentinels, and supporters, totaling around 100 members. Because of constant missions, it's rare for all of them to be in the building at once. He asks if Rudo is ready to meet some coworkers. Rudo questions the timing, but Engine insists it won't take long since most should be out. Unfortunately, nearly every cleaner is hanging out in the break room, so Engine decides introductions can wait. He leads Rudo to the boss's room, but warns him not to demand information outright. Information is valuable, and he'll need to offer to work for it. He also advises never to ask about the boss's vital instrument. The boss doesn't like discussing it, and no one else knows what it does anyway. They trust the boss completely, so they've never cared to find out. After hearing how much the boss is respected, Rudo wants to make a good first impression. So, he opens the door to introduce himself, but to his surprise, the office is empty. Just then, Semiyu walks up behind them and says she totally forgot to mention that the boss is out on some business, so he won't be around for a while. Engine had no idea, so he apologizes to Rudo and asks Semiyu if she knows when the boss will be back. But she's got no clue where the boss even went to begin with, so it looks like Rudo is just going to have to sit and wait until the boss gets back. Just then, Ryo shows up and tells Rudo that if he's got nothing better to do, he's free to come watch her work if he wants, and it would be a great opportunity for the two of them to get to know each other better. Rudo agrees to go with her, Semu gives a breakdown on the mission Raya will be going on. One of the towns near a polluted zone is worried because trash beasts have been approaching its gate recently, and they don't want to take any chances, so they ask the cleaners to come help. It seems simple so far, but Rudo hasn't been following a single word Semu just said, so she asks Engine if he actually explained anything to Rudo or not. Engine admits that he may have skipped over a few important details, so Semu gives him a crash course. Basically, on the ground, there are two different types of land: the habitable areas known as safe zones, and the trash-filled wastelands known as polluted zones. While all polluted zones are dangerous, some are particularly deadly. These areas are called no man's land. The trash beasts there are so powerful and violent that any human who wanders in usually ends up dead. It's nothing short of a miracle that Engine found Rudo when he did, because Rudo definitely would have died if left on his own. Semu warns Rudo that whenever he's in a polluted zone, he needs to wear a gas mask because breathing toxic air for too long can make him seriously ill. A little while later, Rudo arrives at the job site with Ryo and her team. Even though he can't officially become part of the cleaners until the boss approves him, she wants him to stay close and pay attention. Rudo looks beyond the city wall and sees an empty wasteland, which must be where the polluted lands start. He wonders how long he was breathing toxic air when he first got here. Now that he's seen the cities down here, he is amazed at how different they are from his expectations. Back when Rudo was in the sphere, he thought people dropped into the hole would die immediately, and he had no idea there were people living down here. For a moment, he wonders if the other spheres know about this, but even if they did, they would probably continue dumping trash here. Once Rudo catches up with Ryo, he asks who the other guys are. She explains that they are cleaners on the mission, but without powers, so they mostly handle support. One supporter turns around and introduces himself, but when they shake hands, he accidentally squeezes too hard. Ryo laughs and tells Rudo that the guy is known for his physical strength. He can crack trash beasts open with a single punch. Rudo is amazed that everyone here is on such a different level, so he plans to watch and learn as much as possible, even though this is supposed to be an easy job. Just then, trash beasts emerge from the polluted lands. Ryo tells Rudo to stand back and watch. At first, there are only weak ones that can't damage the fence, but then larger ones arrive that could break through. Rudo panics, but Ryo assures him it's still under control, and even says they might finish early so she can throw him a welcome party. Rudo asks how she could think of a party at a time like this, and Ryo tells him that to survive on the ground, he needs to learn to keep a cool head in dangerous situations. Rudo agrees, but then a giant trash beast appears. Ryo can't believe her eyes. This is the first time she's seen one like this. She takes out her vital instrument, planning to thin out the herd first. She jumps into the air, activates her scissors, and beheads several trash beasts in one move. Rudo is mesmerized by her skill, but the supporters remind him that even as an observer, he still needs to watch his surroundings to protect himself. One of the trash beasts manages to slip behind Rudo while he isn't looking and is about to ram into him. At the last second, a supporter steps in, stops it with one hand, crushes its skull, and throws it over to Ryu. She readies her scissors and splits it in half when it lands. She asks the supporters to keep them coming, so they get to work crushing trash beasts and tossing them toward Ryu. Trash beasts can't be truly killed without the use of a vital instrument, but the supporters can crush or disable them to make it easier for Ryo to finish them off. Once most of the smaller ones are gone, Ryo goes after the big one. While she's doing that, the supporters keep the remaining small trash beasts out of her way. However, one supporter is caught off guard when a trash beast suddenly springs back to life and is about to crush him. At the last second, Rudo steps in to protect him. After seeing how well everyone works together, Rudo realizes that if he wants to be part of the team, he needs to pull his weight and have their backs. As he says this, his powers react with a rod in his hand, turning it into a protective cage. Rudo has no idea what triggered his power this time, since it has only activated when he's angry, and he wasn't angry at anyone. The cage crumbles soon after, but it buys enough time for Ryo to arrive and destroy the trash beast. They're all grateful to Rudo for stepping in, but the big one still remains. Ryo tried cutting it in half earlier, but it somehow pieced itself back together. Annoyed, she decides to keep slicing it until it stops moving. Since it's a new type of beast, they don't know what it's capable of, so a few supporters head out to warn nearby cities while Ryo engages it again. She stabs its face, then attacks the tendrils on top of its head. After cutting them all off, she spots a glowing area on the back of its head that seems important. The beast reacts violently, confirming her suspicion that it's the weak spot. She leaps into the air and slams her scissors into its head, piercing whatever was powering it and turning it to dust. When the supporters ask how she defeated it, Ryo explains that she pushed this thing out of its head, and it must have been its power source. She hopes she's wrong, though, because the object in her hand is a vital instrument. If trash beasts can fuse with vital instruments, they have a serious problem. Elsewhere, the men who tried to kidnap Rudo Rudo wakes up in a pile of trash, confused, since the last thing he remembers is getting beaten by a spirit kid. Just then, he notices a man sitting on a couch in front of him. The man tells him he wants to hear all about the spirit kid that beat him up. Later that night, Zenka gets up from bed and hears a lot of people talking in the cafeteria. He goes to check it out and is surprised to see everyone in the middle of a huge party. He finds Rio and asks her what it's for. She tells him it's Rudo's big welcome party, but Zenka doesn't buy it since Rudo hasn't done anything to earn a party this big. He bets Rio and the others just wanted an excuse to get drunk, and he's not wrong. Since it's meant to be Rudo's party, Zenka thinks it's weird he hasn't seen him yet. He looks around and eventually spots Rudo sitting with his head down at a table, looking sad. He asks Rio what's wrong with him, but she's not sure. He's just been upset since they got back from the mission, so she's been giving him space. Speaking of the mission, Zenka asks how it went. He's heard rumors that she went up against a weird trash beast. Rio says weird is an understatement. The beast's core wasn't made of anima. It was a vital instrument. She's hoping she's wrong because the thought of trash beasts with vital instruments gives her a headache, so she's decided not to think about it and just enjoy the party. While they're talking, Grizz pulls up a chair at Rudo's table to have a chat. He asks why Rudo is so down when he did good work yesterday. Rudo says he didn't actually do anything helpful. Grizz reminds him he saved Folo, the Gobble's kid, from getting trampled by the trash beast. But Rudo still feels like he didn't make much of a difference. Rio and Grizz were the ones saving people, while he just rushed in without thinking and made things worse. It was the same back in the sphere. One insult and he'd fly off the rails in rage, and then Rudo would have to apologize for him. His job yesterday was to stay back and observe, but instead, he put himself in danger like a fool. Even so, Grizz thanks Rudo for saving Folo. Supporters are often looked down on as dead weight, and some cleaners treat them like they're worthless. But Rudo showed respect from the start. Folo, for example, wanted to become a cleaner and fight trash beasts. He started working on a treasured object, hoping to become a giver, but over time, realized that vital instrument or not, he still wanted to help people. So he became a supporter instead, because every job is important. Grizz then asks Rudo if he knows what he really wants aside from revenge. Rudo doesn't know how to answer. Grizz tells him it's fine if he can't answer right away. It's a big question, but he's sure Rudo will figure it out because he's still got a long life ahead. Grizz's speech really strikes a chord with Rudo, so he feels a lot better and decides to join the others at the party. Elsewhere, a scrap collector who was kidnapped isn't having such a great time. The man who took him, Jabber, has spent the last few hours torturing him for information about Rudo. The worst part is that the scrap collector has already told him everything he knows, which isn't much, considering he's only seen Rudo once. But Jabber keeps torturing him anyway, just for the fun of it. Now the poor man is a bloody mess, begging to be let go. Instead, Jabber decides to slice his face off to end his misery because he's bored. While he didn't get much useful information, Jabber did learn what Rudo looks like, and that he's both a spirit and a giver, which makes him a perfect addition to Jabber's collection. Later that day, back at Cleaner's HQ, Semia receives an interesting call at the front desk. She gathers the team to explain the details and apologizes for the sudden notice, but Zenka doesn't mind an early job. What he does mind is that she expects him to bring Rudo along. He points out that he's only meant to train Rudo once he becomes an official cleaner, and with the boss gone, that won't be anytime soon. Semia insists she can call in whoever she wants, and besides, Rudo is relevant to the mission. The job came from a merchant whose valuable merchandise, a living, breathing spirit, was snatched by a trash beast in a polluted zone. Everyone is shocked. Spirits like Rudo surviving the fall is rare enough, so the chances of two appearing so close together are almost impossible. That's why she figured Rudo would be interested. If he's lucky, the spirit might even know a way back to the sphere. Rudian tells Rudo there's no pressure, it's his choice. Rudo knows he still can't control his powers properly, so he might slow the team down, but this could be a good chance to learn. He decides to go. Zenka still isn't thrilled, so Semia tells him she was originally going to send Engine, but he recommended Zenka for the job instead. Hearing that his idol picked him gets Zenka fired up, so he agrees, and the others follow his lead. While walking, Rudo asks Grizz if he's sure about going without a weapon. Grizz says basic trash beasts usually go down after a punch or two. Follow chimes in, saying Grizz is just acting tough. In reality, he's always worried. so he carries a lucky charm for safety. The group is then approached by a woman named Grim. Now that everyone's here, she asks if they can get going, as she still needs to show them where the trash beast went. Rudo figures she must be the client. He starts questioning her about the spirit, what they looked like, where she found them, and what condition they were in. Grim says she stumbled across the furry creature while traveling, but it was unconscious the whole time, so she never got to speak to it. She hopes they can find the spirit before it gets hurt. Rudo assumes she's only worried because she wants to sell the spirit's body parts, but Grim says she would never harm it for profit. Rudo still doesn't trust her, but finding the spirit takes priority. Still, Zenka doubts they'll find it alive, and ever since Grim arrived, he's had a bad feeling he can't explain. They reach an old abandoned building, and Grim says that's where the spirit was snatched. They prepare to fight, but instead of a trash beast, the place is empty except for a doll sitting in a chair. Suddenly, Grim shoves them all into the middle of the room, and moments later, the floor collapses beneath them, sending the group falling into the basement. They all manage to survive somehow, and Grizz yells at Grim, demanding to know what she thinks she's doing. She tells them she's just making it easier to get to the spirit, and by that, she means Rudo. Grim then melts into a pile of mud. Down in the tunnel, two shady figures emerge from the darkness holding purple lanterns. Zenka had his suspicions before coming here, and now he wishes he had trusted his gut. It's clear they've fallen into a raider trap. Rudo asks what he means by raiders, so Grizz explains they're basically bandits, but lately their activities have grown extreme, even experimenting on people. Normally they wouldn't be a big deal, but most of them are givers, making them a significant threat. There's no time to waste, so Grizz tells the other three supporters to look for an exit while he and follow protect Rudo. He warns everyone there may be more raiders nearby and asks Zenka to handle the two in front of them. Zenka says he's got it covered, so they should move. After a moment's hesitation, Rudo follows Grizz and follow to find a way out. Rudo says he could have stayed to fight alongside Zenka, but Grizz explains that raiders aren't just ordinary goons. It would be far too risky with Rudo there, making him feel like a burden again. Meanwhile, Zenka asks the raiders how they found Rudo so quickly. He figured it was only a matter of time before word got out about Rudo, and people came after him, but it's only been 2 days. He assumes they're after the money they'd get from selling him. Grim tells him she'd never sell Rudo, not when she could get valuable information by studying his brain. Zenka doesn't care why she wants Rudo, but he hates that she wasted his time with a fake request. Grim tells him he can take his frustration out on her puppet. Within seconds, Zenka is surrounded by mud figures, but he's not worried. They should be easy to destroy. He starts smashing them, but Grim has a trick up her sleeve. Before he realizes it, KZO emerges from one puppet and punches Zenka in the face. Grim's mud puppets may be weak, but with KZO hidden among them, Zenka never knows where the next hit will come from. To make matters worse, mud splatters everywhere each time he destroys a puppet, making it hard to move. Grim says she's enjoyed their fight, but needs to finish him before going after Rudo, since his abilities are troublesome. Zenka cuts her off, saying he's tired of her talking. He admits she had the upper hand at first, but watching her fight has revealed her tactics. She uses her shovel to control the mud. At first, he worried KZO might also have a special weapon, but it turns out all he can do is punch and kick. And the only reason he moves so well in the mud is because he's wearing snowshoes to distribute his weight. Finding this amusing, Zenka decides to end it. Grim, now frustrated, sends all her puppets at once. Before they can reach him, Zenka jams his stick into the ground and uses it like a tuning fork to sense vibrations, detecting even the smallest anomalies. It only takes seconds to locate the puppet with KZO inside. He charges, smashes KZO in the face, then strikes Grim, knocking them both out instantly. With Grim unconscious, her mud puppets disintegrate. Zenka is almost disappointed by how easy it was, until he hears Jabber's voice right behind him and instantly knows he's in deep trouble. Meanwhile, Rudo and the supporters make it to the exit door. Grizz opens it and finds a staircase, instructing the rest of the supporters to go up and call for backup, while he stays behind to check on Zenka. Just then, someone rushes toward them, and they assume it must be Zenka, thinking he's already dealt with the raiders. However, it turns out to be the enemy boss. The raider gives Rudo a careful look, confirming he's their target. He leaps onto the exit door and smashes the wall, blocking their escape, recognizing Rudo as the spirit giver. Grizz Rubian warns him that Rudo is now part of the cleaners, and that messing with him will make him the enemy of all of them. The boss ignores the warning, saying he was only late because of his poor sense of direction. He claims he never meant to give them this much time, and begins walking toward them. While Grizz tries to ask about Zanka's whereabouts, the raider brushes him off and tells Rudo that someone wants to chat with him. The raider rips off Rudo's mask, telling him there are no trash beasts here. When Rudo asks about Zanka, the boss says he went easy on him and only knocked him out, though the poison might be giving him a bad time. The raider then uses his vital instrument to transform the rings on his fingers into sharp claws, warning Rudo to come quietly. Both supporters jump on him to try to hold him down, but they fail and are slammed to the ground. As the boss raises his claws again, Grizz steps in front of Rudo, vowing to protect his team at all costs. The boss lowers his claws and mocks what he's heard about the so-called weak supporters the cleaners have, saying they are useless and cannot protect anything. Rudo tells Grizz to fall back since he cannot fight the raider unarmed, insisting he can handle him himself. The boss smirks and asks Rudo to promise he won't get mad, before revealing that he's already murdered Grizz with an unseen attack. The raider stabs his claws through Grizz, declaring that weaklings like him are worthless. Grizz's lucky charm falls as he dies, and Rudo quickly catches it. A memory flashes in Rudo's mind, back to when Recto came home and found him banging his head against the wall, blood running down his face. After laying the boy down, Recto asks why he did it. Rudo replies that Recto taught him never to hurt others, so instead, he hurt himself. Seeing this gives Recto a headache, but he sits down and gently asks what made him do it. Rudo says the pain in his hands had started to fade. He was avoiding people, and he doesn't really know why, only that he carries a burning hate inside. Even if someone asks him to explain, he can't put it into words. Hearing that, Recto understands Rudo feels abandoned by his parents and now believes he is worthless, a burden too heavy for a child to bear. Rudo then asks what worthless really means. Instead of answering, Recto patches him up and takes him outside, saying one reason for his sadness is that he has nothing fun to do. He encourages him to discover the world until he finds something he truly enjoys. Recto hypes him up, saying there will come a day when his empty room is filled with things he loves, but makes him promise to give advance warning if he ever wants to bring a girl home. After that, they head to the backwater village's library to read books. Later, Recto tries teaching Rudo how to play soccer, but the innocent boy feels bad for the ball and starts patting it instead. Next, they try cooking, and Rudo shows surprising skill at cutting vegetables, so much so that he even cuts straight through the board. Though it's an epic fail, Recto is glad the boy at least showed some energy. They still have plenty of time to discover what he truly enjoys. Just then, Rudo sees a villager throwing away trash and asks Recto what he is doing. Fascinated by the discarded items, Rudo barges through the door and dives into the dumpster. By the time Recto catches up, he finds the boy bawling his eyes out while clutching an object tightly. Confused, Recto wonders what kind of emotion he is even witnessing. Through his tears, Rudo cries that it's horrible for an object with a long life ahead to be thrown away, simply because it's slightly broken. He yells nonstop that he wants to fix it. At that moment, Recto realizes Rudo is not just projecting his own feelings onto the object. He genuinely sees worth in things others already consider worthless. Back in the present, Rudo awakens the power inside Grizz's lucky charm. Still clinging to life, Grizz finally understands why he could never activate it himself. No one had ever truly grasped its nature until now. Rudo's ability doesn't simply turn random objects into vital instruments. Instead, it brings out their true hidden worth. Rudo transforms the lucky charm into a defensive weapon with a large eye. Instead of panicking, the enemy boss drools over it, intrigued. He grows curious and asks Rudo if this is his vital instrument, eager to learn everything about it. Meanwhile, the other supporter carries Grizz to safety, doing his best to provide first aid. Rudo recalls how Grizz was the one who made him realize what he truly wanted to do. If not for him, he would still be lost. With that in mind, Rudo steels himself to strike the enemy. The raider introduces himself as Jabberwonger, saying he loves strong givers. He holds out his claws and asks Rudo his name. After the introduction, Jabber gets excited like a maniac, shouting that he wants them to tear each other apart before dashing toward him. Meanwhile, the supporter struggles to stop Grizz's bleeding, but the blood keeps flowing heavily. Watching Rudo fight, Grizz realizes the reason he couldn't fight before was because his emotions clouded his true purpose. But now, there's nothing left to distract him. Back in the fight, Jabber leaps back and clings to the wall, taunting Rudo and asking why he isn't coming to him. Rudo simply tells him to come himself. The raider obeys, lunging over him with a powerful attack, but lands flat on the floor as Rudo has already dodged it. Jabber follows up with a barrage of attacks, but Rudo dodges every single one. Finally, when Jabber asks why his attacks don't even reach, Rudo explains that his friend Grizz prayed for everyone to return safe and sound, and safe means uninjured. That's why he is focused on defending, so that none of the enemy's attacks can touch him. Jabber remarks that Rudo's vital instrument only seems to increase his ability to dodge, and mocks how useless it would be if he couldn't attack. But Rudo points out that Jabber has been missing the truth all along. He hasn't taken a single step, yet he's still dodging every strike. The one moving the whole time has been Jabber himself, which means Rudo can predict his every move. As Jabber rushes in again, Rudo uses his vital instrument to paralyze him. Since the talisman cannot attack, he follows up with a punch, because fists are Grizz's preferred weapon, and he wishes to honor his comrade. The raider bleeds from his nose but laughs like a maniac, impressed that Rudo used such a terrifying instrument only to guide his movements, and finish with a fist. Rudo reminds him that he was the one who wanted to have fun, so he's more than happy to play along, until he leaves him a heap of trash on the ground. The disrespect enrages Jabber, who jokes that Rudo is cold-hearted for not feeling guilty about showing no mercy, but Rudo tells him he's the only exception. At that moment, Jabber appears behind him, ready to strike, only to be paralyzed again, and smashed with a brutal punch to the gut that sends him flying. The boss quickly recovers, leaping around so fast that dust clouds fill the area, making it impossible for Rudo's eyes to track him. Jabber smashes pillars apart, hurling slabs of stone at him from every direction. Forcing Rudo to shield his eyes, he charges in for the kill. But the Lucky Charm's all-seeing eye freezes him once more, letting Rudo nearly crush his skull, though Jabber slips away at the last second. Laughing madly, Jabber charges back in, moving even faster. But each time he gets close, the eye freezes him, and Rudo blasts him away again. The lunatic bounces around like a blur, yet Rudo continues blocking his attacks, and pounding him into the ground. While Jabber cackles in madness, Rudo silences him with a final two-punch combo that knocks him out cold for a moment, sending him stumbling until he collapses against the wall. Panting like a dog, Jabber hears Rudo telling him to just give up already. But the raider only smiles, saying it has been a long time since he was beaten this badly, and he thinks Rudo enjoyed it too. Disgusted by his expression, Rudo watches as the man suddenly grows serious. Jabber theorizes that Rudo's vital instrument works by sensing the killing intent of an enemy and moving him out of harm's way. But he also noticed that when he threw slabs of stone, things without bloodlust didn't trigger it at all. With a twisted grin, he begins describing his own vital instrument, Minera. The right claw carries a poison strong enough to paralyze a target until it can barely breathe, before piercing straight into the chest. Rudo stares in confusion as the madman laughs in delight at the thought of pain. Then Jabber explains his real plan. If he blacks out from his own poison and fights unconsciously, there will be no killing intent for Rudo to detect. As he says this, his consciousness slowly fades, his body twitches, his eyes roll back, and the wall behind him shatters. In the next moment, Jabber suddenly wakes up screaming, like he just stepped on a Lego. His eyes rolled back completely white. He spins into a wild dash attack aimed straight at Rudo, who dodges at the very last second, probably questioning all his life choices. Realizing Jabber has gotten even stronger, Rudo wonders how that's even possible. He glances over and sees Follow giving first aid to Grease, and instantly knows continuing the fight here will just put them in danger. He tries to drag Jabber away, but the guy's already in his face again, swinging like a maniac. Rudo attempts to use the talisman to control his movements, but plot twist doesn't activate. He barely catches Jabber's punch with his hands and throws him off using pure brute strength, powered by his vital instrument. Sadly, Jabber just hops back up like nothing happened. At this point, Rudo realizes Jabber has gone full berserk mode by overdosing on his own poison. Since Grease Talisman only reacts to hostile intent, it's useless against the state. Rudo can't believe Jabber figured out a counter so quickly. Looking at him now, Rudo thinks he's become what people call a masochist. That reminds him of when bullies called him the same word as a kid, and he had to awkwardly ask Regto what it meant, only for Regto to admit he didn't know either. Back in the present, Rudo has no idea how to fight this lunatic. Jabber charges with murderous glee, forcing him to dodge desperately. But then, Jabber winds up for a strike Rudo knows he can't avoid, until a blue staff cuts through the air and blocks it. When Rudo looks closer, he instantly recognizes it. Yep, it's Zenka, glaring like he just walked into the wrong anime and decided to own the scene. Zanka tells Rudo he's done enough and that he'll handle things from here. Rudo rushes over, asking how he survived the poison. Zanka just smirks and says not to underestimate him. Also, he compliments Rudo's shiny new vital instrument, calling it pretty cool. But Rudo warns him, it doesn't work on Jabber while he's in berserk mode, it only lets him dodge. Zanka, ever the thinker, asks if the talisman reacts to hostile intent. When Rudo confirms, Zanka reveals he'd been observing the fight before stepping in and came up with a plan. Since Jabber's legs are busted and his movements limited, maybe they can use the talisman differently. His big idea? Let me hit you. Rudo stares at him like he just suggested eating garbage. Zanka explains, if he hits Rudo, the talisman might drag him straight toward Jabber, giving Zanka's staff enough reach to land before Jabber's claws. Rudo hesitates, pointing out that if it doesn't work, he's basically just volunteering to get punched in the face. Zanka shrugs and says, then I'll endure it. Classic tough guy logic. Before they can test the crazy plan, Jabber rises again, roaring, and launches another devastating attack. Both Rudo and Zanka barely manage to dodge. Zanka warns Rudo not to let Jabber's claws touch him. Even a tiny scratch is enough to put him down for good. But Rudo, being Rudo, tells Zanka to go ahead and strike him anyway. So, as Zanka prepares to unleash a full attack, Rudo's vital instrument reacts and pushes Zanka right in front of Jabber. With flawless timing, Zanka slams his staff into Jabber's face. For a second, both Rudo and Zanka just stare like, wait, did that actually work? Jabber, not appreciating the impromptu face massage, charges back at them. Zanka goes in again, and bam, he's instantly teleported in front of Jabber once more, delivering another staff smack. Realizing this hilarious yet effective strategy, the two keep repeating it, basically turning Jabber into a living punching bag. But right before they can land the finishing blow, the poison inside Jabber wears off. Zanka takes one last swing, smashing him into the ground, but the effort drains him. He collapses, groaning that his entire body feels like it's been steamrolled. At the same time, Rudo's vital instrument crumbles to dust in his hands. Then things get worse. Rudo suddenly seizes up and collapses. He's been poisoned by Jabber's claw. Meanwhile, Jabber casually injects himself with a chemical from his own claw and bounces back to full health like it's nothing. Zanka is in disbelief. Jabber explains, almost smugly, that the left claw erases pain, while the right claw's poison lasts only 10 minutes on him because of his immunity. For Zanka though, a nice, long 30 minutes. Just to rub it in, Jabber stabs Zanka again, refreshing the dose. With Rudo twitching helplessly, Jabber picks him up and walks off like he just won a shopping prize. When Jabber resurfaces, he's confused. The hole was supposed to lead into a building, not outside. Before he can make sense of it, Engine, not Engine, whacks him in the stomach with an umbrella, forcing him to drop Rudo. The cleaners gather around, telling Jabber he's messed up big time. Engine notes that the hole was so deep, even their choker comms couldn't send a signal that far down, clearly Jabber's trap. If Tom hadn't found a phone in the nearby town, they never would have known. Hearing this, Tom grows emotional, fearing Grease and the others underground might be dead. Engine reassures her, telling her not to underestimate them, then orders her to lead a rescue team. Rio checks on Rudo, saying he looks fine, only for Regto, not Kane, to argue that he looks like death warmed over. Semu, not Delman, explodes with rage at Jabber, vowing revenge. Engine backs him up, declaring Jabber won't mess with the cleaners and walk away alive. Jabber, still unfazed, says he has his own orders to bring Rudo back no matter what. Just as he charges up his vital instrument for another round, a blue-haired girl suddenly appears, hugging him from behind and telling him he's done enough and should return to base. Jabber argues that he's not ready to leave yet since he still hasn't secured Rudo, but the blue-haired girl stays calm, insisting he come home. Engine watches in confusion, wondering where in the world this girl even popped out from. Jabber keeps resisting until she drops the line about the boss smiling when his name came up. That shuts him up instantly. Realizing he's finally willing to listen, she lets him go. Jabber turns to the cleaners, saying he has to leave, and reveals a manhole-shaped portal opening behind them. Rio is stunned. Before stepping through, Jabber looks back at Rudo, calling him skilled for a sparite. He adds that the poison won't kill him. It's basically just a forced nap. As Jabber begins walking away, Rudo suddenly calls out to him, Still weak on the ground, Rudo musters the strength to declare that it's not over, not until he pays Jabber back with interest for what he did to Grease. This shocks Jabber. He didn't expect Rudo to still be conscious after taking his poison. His eyes then shift to Rudo's hand, where he notices a familiar pattern. Jabber remarks it's quite the coincidence. They got that same pattern from the same series. He says his boss will be thrilled to hear about it, leaving the cleaners completely confused. Before disappearing, Jabber promises Rudo that next time, he'll be back fully prepared. With that, he slips into the manhole portal, which vanishes instantly. The cleaners are stunned. Rudo is furious, but he's also left wondering what Jabber meant about the series. About half an hour later, the trapped cleaners finally rescue Rudo. The moment he's free, he rushes to Gris's side. Seeing him in such a dire condition breaks Rudo's heart, and he apologizes sincerely for destroying his talisman. Gris, barely holding on, reassures him. Though the talisman was important, what truly mattered was using it to fight back against Jabber. He tells Rudo he did great in the field today, which matters far more. Later, back at headquarters, Rudo sits off to the side, clearly pissed. Engine joins him, asking why he looks so down, then praises him for finally learning to use his vital instrument. Instead of cheering up, Rudo vents, frustrated that he couldn't protect Gris, first in the sphere, and now again, here. Every time he thinks he's moving forward, he feels like he fails all over again. He wonders if he's destined to be a failure forever. Engine gently reminds him that Gris knew what he was signing up for as a cleaner. He risks his life without hesitation, not because Rudo is just a spare, but because he saw him as a kindred spirit, someone who values both people and objects the same way. Engine encourages him to pay his respects to Gris. Rudo walks in, bracing himself to see Gris's corpse, but freezes in shock when he finds Gris still alive. Engine and Tom pat Rudo on the head, realizing his sulking earlier was because he thought Gris had died. But Gris grins and says they shouldn't count him out yet, he's still alive and kicking. Rudo can't wrap his head around it. He saw Gris take a claw straight through the chest, something fatal for any normal human. Gris explains that he survived thanks to the cleaners' medical team. He introduces the girl who saved him, Aisha, the only healer among the cleaners. All eyes turn to her, but she nervously downplays her role, saying she's usually not useful and just got lucky this time. Rudo is stunned at her humility, but Engine explains that Aisha is just incredibly shy. Gris, however, is deeply grateful. He thanks Aisha for saving his life and also thanks Follow for pulling him out of Jabber's rampage. Since Gris is like an older brother to Follow, those words hit hard. Follow breaks down crying and hugs him tightly. Gris then turns to Rudo and praises him for standing his ground against someone as terrifying as Jabber, and for working side by side with Zenka. He's especially glad that the talisman he spent so much time maintaining actually ended up being useful to Rudo. Engine then brings up the bigger picture. He warns that the raiders seem to be deliberately targeting cleaners now, meaning their enemies aren't just trash beasts anymore. But there's some good news. During the fight, one of the raiders mentions something called the border. Just then, a man walks in. He believes this means the raiders are digging into research about the sphere. Engine calls him boss. Rudo stiffens, realizing this must be the leader of the cleaners. The man approaches and apologizes for not being there to welcome him on his first day. Then he introduces himself as Corvus, leader of the cleaners. Corvus admits that at first, he thought Rudo was only staying temporarily to gather information and was ready to kick him out. But after seeing how Rudo connected with the team and risked his life to protect them, Corvus believes he has a special power worth keeping. With no objections, he officially welcomes Rudo as a cleaner. He invites him to his office to give him a uniform and share something important. In the office, Corvus explains that the border is a space between the sphere and the surface. Supposedly, anyone who tries to cross it dies. But there's a strange rumor. Apparently, a woman lives in no man's land near the border. One lost traveler claimed she helped him, saying she lived there to watch the people who fall from above. Even stranger, she claims some of those people came and went without dying. This makes Corvus believe it might be possible for people to cross the border alive. Rudo realizes that if he can find one of the people this woman saw, he might learn how to reach the sphere, and maybe even discover how he himself survived falling. Corvus asks if Rudo plans to stay or go. With fiery determination, Rudo declares he's going. Just then, Engine barges in and teases that Rudo looks pretty cool in his new cleaner uniform. Later, Rudo sets off toward no man's land in search of the mysterious woman, but Follow desperately tries to stop him. Rudo drags Follow across the floor with ease, leaving Follow completely stunned at his absurd strength. With his eyes glowing white, Rudo declares that finding the woman is the only way to learn how to return to the sphere. But the moment Engine calls out, Rudo freezes. Engine warns him that he can't just rush into such a dangerous place without preparation. Sure, Rudo can finally use his powers, but he hasn't figured out their limits or weaknesses. Charging in blind is basically suicide. That's why Engine says he's going with him. Not only can he keep Rudo alive, but he can also study any raiders they encounter. Rudo then asked how raiders even become givers in the first place. Engine explains that not everyone has a good heart. Some people look kind but treat objects like trash, while others seem cruel but actually care for things. In other words, morality has nothing to do with becoming a giver. Rudo realizes he was wrong to assume bad people couldn't look after objects, but even so, his hatred for raiders still burns strong. As the tension finally dies down, Engine tells Rudo to rest for the night. The past few days have been pure chaos, and he needs a break. Rudo heads to his room, lies on his bed, and stares at the ceiling. Relaxing? Yeah, not his thing. He's not used to sleeping much and secretly just wants to go pick through trash. That's when Rio bursts in, announcing that since Rudo's now an official cleaner, she's giving him a tour of headquarters. Along the way, she asks about food in the sphere. Rudo shrugs, bread, soup, the basics. Then she asks if he ever had sweets. The very mention makes Rudo flinch. Sweets in the sphere were so rare, only the rich got them. Rio laughs and shows him the cleaner's massive candy stash. Rudo nearly faints in shock. Engine warns him not to overdo it, saying sweets down here are basically more addictive than drugs. But the moment Rudo takes a bite, his taste buds ascend into another dimension. He shovels handful after handful into his mouth like a starving raccoon at a buffet. Engine warns he'll get fat, but Rudo's too busy achieving dessert nirvana to care. Then Deer walks up, glaring at him. Rudo panics, thinking Deer's mad about the candy hoarding, so he politely offers one. Deer snatches it and eats it without a word. The tension spikes. This could turn ugly until Bro drags Deer away before fists or more sweets start flying. Meanwhile, Zanka spots what looks like a fat stranger waddling out of a room. Alarmed, he almost calls for backup until he realizes it's just Rudo bloated from inhaling sweets. Later, Rudo's back to normal and out training, but his powers won't activate. Engine teases him, saying maybe he ate so many sweets, he forgot how to use them. Rudo insists he remembers the feeling, but still, nothing. That's when Zenka suggests maybe Rudo needs garbage around to get going, since he loves fixing discarded items. To test it, he dumps trash in front of Rudo. Rudo digs through it, grabs a random piece, and suddenly, bam! His power works, transforming it into a vital instrument. Engine praises Zanka for the clever idea, calling him a good trainer. Zanka blushes but quickly pretends to be cool again. Rudo tries pushing further, creating multiple weapons at once, and succeeds. But then he collapses with a nosebleed, his body straining under the pressure. Engine suspects it's partly due to the insanely high quality of Rudo's gloves. Curious, Rudo asks what he means. Engine explains that the longer an object is cared for, the stronger it becomes. This is called improving its quality. But in battle, quality alone isn't enough. The user's mindset and experience matter just as much. Zanka adds that since Rudo has cared for his gloves since childhood, their quality must already be incredible. Still, he wonders if that's the only reason, or if it's tied to the mysterious series Jabber mentioned. As blood drips from his nose, Rudo reflects. Why did the vital instrument he made from Grease Talisman fall apart, while the new weapons remain stable? He suspects a time limit, but Rio suggests maybe the talisman vanished because it fulfilled its purpose. Zenka agrees, pointing out it only fell apart after the battle ended. Engine builds on the idea. Perhaps Rudo's true power is to draw out the full potential of discarded things, let them serve their purpose, and then allow them to rest. Rudo didn't destroy Grease Talisman. He honored it, letting it shine one last time before fading naturally. Hearing this, Rudo finally realizes his power isn't about breaking objects. It's about unlocking their maximum potential. Still, Riao can't shake Jabber's words about Rudo's gloves being part of something called the series. Could there be more like them out there? She suddenly gets an idea and asks Rudo if his gloves have a special name. Rudo looks confused at the question, so Rio explains, when you truly love something, you usually give it a name to make it special. Rudo admits he never thought about naming them. Engine, always ready to stir things up, suggests he do it right now, like some kind of naming ceremony for gloves. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Jabber and his colleague return to base to give their report. There, they find their boss sitting alone at the edge of the room. The boss reveals something shocking. Rudo's gloves are part of what's known as the Watchmen series. Early the next morning, Rudo is in the bathroom washing his gloves. Since he has to take them off, the wounds on his arms are giving him hell. It takes a while, but once he's done, he grabs a towel and heads back to his room, only to find Riao lying on his bed like she owns the place. Rudo thinks Riao is cool and all, but this feels like skipping about 20 chapters ahead, so he immediately asks what she's doing in his room so early. Besides, his door was locked. Riao explains that her room is right above his, and she could hear him moaning and groaning, so she climbed in through the window to check on him. Very normal roommate behavior, obviously. She asks if it has to do with the wounds on his hands, and as soon as she brings it up, Rudo hides his arms behind his back. His gloves help with the pain, but he still has to take them off sometimes to clean them, so he just powers through it. Riao tells him it's nothing to be ashamed of, but those don't look like any injuries she's ever seen. When she asks how it happened, Rudo admits only his crappy parents know, because they're the ones who left him like this. Before leaving, Riao lets him know she understands what it's like to have terrible parents, so he's not alone. Meanwhile, the others go to check on the resident artist after hearing weird noises from his room, only to discover he's living the classic life of a mappa animator. No sunlight, no family, just endless work. They wisely leave him alone. A few hours later, Rudo and Engine meet Arct at the front desk. Since Rudo's full face isn't finished, Arct suggests they take care of his final prep first. Confused, Rudo asks what a full face even is, and Engine explains it's basically a mask all cleaners must wear when heading into no man's land. The masks are made by an in-house artist, but when they checked on him earlier, he looked completely deranged, so yeah, he's probably inspired. They don't want to rush him, so Rudo's prep comes first. Siu explains that a lot can go wrong in no man's land, so to minimize risks, they'll get a particular giver to put a spell on Rudo for safety. The guy sometimes paints the walls of Cleaner HQ, but he hasn't shown up lately, so they'll need to drive out to Kami's town to find him. Before hitting the road, Engine introduces the team. From the Immuta division, there's Zanka and Riao. From the Eager division, there's Tamzi and Delman. And for supporters, they've got the reliable Follow and Tamoy. Normally, they'd have 5 supporters, but since this is no man's land, they're cutting back on non-powered members. After the briefing, Delman charges up to Rudo and, in the loudest voice ever, declares he heard his story and thinks what those spirits did to him is unforgivable. He loves passionate people like Rudo and invites him to join the Eager division, but Tamzi quickly tells him to chill. Engine was the one who recruited Rudo, so he's automatically part of the Immuta division. Speaking of passion, Engine asks Delman if he can give one of his trademark fire-breathing speeches. The second he hears that, Delman launches into full throttle, yelling words of encouragement so loudly that the walls might file a noise complaint. His spirit is so infectious that even Rudo joins in the shouting. After the impromptu pep rally, they all pile into the car and begin the long drive to Canvas Town. As they roll up to the entrance, Rudo asks Tamzi if all surface cities have massive domes like this one. Tamzi explains that only the big cities can afford them, and the main purpose is simple: keeping deadly sky trash from raining down on everyone's heads. Apparently, garbage gets dumped from the sphere at random. If you're unlucky enough to be in the drop zone without cover, well, let's just say you become part of the trash collection. Rudo feels guilty that the sphere causes so much suffering down here, but Tamzi quickly tells him to chill. He's not the one pressing the dump garbage button. At the gate, 2 shady guys are trying to get in, but every time they step forward, an invisible wall slams them back. The gate's wide open, yet it clearly doesn't like them. Then Engine and the crew casually stroll past, and the barrier doesn't even blink. Rudo is baffled until Engine explains. Basically, as long as you're not here to kidnap, traffic organs, or start a crime ring, you can walk through just fine. Sure enough, Rudo walks right through without an issue. The 2 rejects, still stuck outside. Inside, Rudo notices every wall is covered in graffiti, and curiosity gets the better of him. Engine explains that Canvas Town was founded as a haven for creative people to express themselves freely, because while some love art, others hate it. This city gave artists a place to go nuts with paint without someone screaming, "Stop drawing on my house." But sightseeing isn't on the agenda. They're here to meet a particular artist, Gob, the one responsible for giving out protective tags. Rudo doesn't get how doodles are supposed to protect them, so Engine explains. Gob's vital instrument allows him to embed emotions and intent into his drawings, turning them into reality. For example, he can sketch a phrase like, "I want to negate all surprise attacks," and bam, it works. The invisible barrier outside, that was Gob's work too. He literally scribbled, "Don't let troublemaking jerks in" around the walls, and now riffraff like those two losers at the gate can't enter. Crime rate solved with a Sharpie. Rudo thinks Gob's ability sounds way too overpowered, like cheat code level. But Engine clarifies that the instrument doesn't actually belong to Gob. It was handed down from its previous user. He's about to go deeper into the story when suddenly, a little girl runs around the corner and smacks right into him. She falls, tears welling up in her eyes, and before Engine can say a word, she bolts. Engine immediately assumes he's the villain here, but before he can spiral into guilt, the others start teasing him about making kids cry. Just then, the mayor of Canvas Town himself strolls out of the alley. That shocks Engine, since the mayor usually spends his mornings tucked away at home, not randomly wandering around the streets. Engine explains that he's here to see Gob, but with a heavy expression, the mayor breaks the news. Gob died earlier that morning. Engine is stunned, refusing to believe it until the mayor takes him to see the body. Sure enough, Gob is gone. The cause? Pollution poisoning. He was the type to chase inspiration wherever it led him, which often meant wandering into toxic zones. To make matters worse, he regularly forgot to wear his mask, no matter how many times the mayor nagged him about it. Rudo never had a real conversation with Gob, but he remembers seeing him paint a wall in Cleaner HQ when he first arrived. Now he feels an overwhelming sense of guilt. After all, Gob only died because of the endless garbage falling from the sphere. Picking up on Rudo's mood, Tamsi quickly reassures him it's not his fault. Pollution poisoning claims lives all the time down here. The mayor then explains something unexpected. Gob had already chosen a successor to inherit his vital instrument. That successor is Remlin, the little girl they saw earlier. This is the way it has always been. The wielder of the pen chooses a successor, and once passed on, both the instrument and its abilities are inherited. That makes Remlin the new spellcaster of Canvas Town. The mayor admits Remlin is a gifted artist, and Gob chose wisely, but he worries whether it's right to place such responsibility on a child. Most givers awaken their vital instruments after years of care and attachment, making their powers feel natural. But in Remlin's case, she has to learn everything from scratch. He apologizes to Engine, knowing this puts their mission on hold, but honoring Gob's memory comes first. Engine agrees, there's nothing to apologize for. He remembers the first time he met Gob, catching him tagging a wall outside Cleaner HQ. Instead of being ashamed, Gob looked ridiculously proud of his work before sprinting off to paint another wall. That playful side is what Engine says he'll miss the most. As the group prepares to leave, they turn to Remlin to say goodbye, but she stays silent. Then, out of nowhere, she jumps up and declares she's done sulking. Snatching the marker from the mayor, she races to the roof. The others follow, and she explains that while Gob's death hurts, he wouldn't want them to wallow in sadness. Instead, she'll send him off with a bang. Activating the power of the pen, Remlin creates a glowing memorial and unleashes a sky full of fireworks. Brilliant colors light up the city, reminding Rudo of his time with Regto. Inspired, the people of Canvas Town burst into celebration, painting, and partying in the streets. Watching the joy spread, Remlin smiles. This was exactly her vision, because the best way to honor an artist like Gob is to let his memory ignite new creativity in others. Soon after that, Remlin proudly paints her latest masterpiece right on Rudo's face. The result? Full-on clown makeup. Let's just say Rudo wasn't exactly tickled pink to look like the world's saddest circus act. But Remlin, she couldn't stop laughing like it was the best joke of the year. While Rudo was busy grumbling about his new career in comedy, Engine chatted with the mayor. They finally understood the criteria spellcasters use when choosing their successor. The mayor nodded and pointed out that Remlin was just as whimsical as Gob had been. Curious, Engine asked how many spellcasters there had been in total. The mayor replied that Remlin was probably the sixth one, since spellcasters only leave their history behind through their art. Meanwhile, Remlin introduced herself to Rudo Rudo and asked him what he wanted her to draw and, more importantly, where. She explained her power doesn't work as well if she doesn't get permission to draw at a spot, like asking for a landlord's approval before spray painting the building. Engine recalled it was the same with Gob and asked the mayor if all spellcasters inherited the same powers. The mayor explained that while their abilities are similar, small differences appear depending on the individual. Engine theorized that the vital instrument grants the same base power, but personality tweaks it. Remlin, however, quickly shot that theory down. According to her, their powers look alike because every spellcaster is basically a wild eccentric who enjoys dueling balloons and flowers in the middle of life or death battles. It's not about rules, it's about vibes. Engine, confused but trying his best, concluded they all think the same way. Remlin immediately disagreed, saying they think differently and draw different things too. At this point, the mayor cut in and warned Engine that debating with artists or flat earthers is the fastest way to lose his sanity. Meanwhile, Rudo asked Remlin to draw something on his back that could protect him from one serious hit. Remlin got fired up, turned her brush into a tattoo gun, and got ready to make it permanent ink business. The mayor and Engine panicked, thinking she had just found some random tattoo gun. Nope, turns out her brush can transform into any tool she needs. Thankfully, they managed to stop her before she permanently turned Rudo into her canvas. Remlin shrugged and said fine, she'd just use water-based paint instead, though it would wash off the second Rudo took a shower. However, Remlin wasn't done yet. She came up with another idea, just as mischievous as her tattoo stunt, and asked Rudo for permission to cast a spell on his body without revealing what tool she'd use. Classic trickster move. Before he could overthink it, she went ahead and drew spells not only on Rudo but on everyone else in the group. Exhausted from casting on 9 people at once, she still insisted on tagging along with them to the gate. At the gate, Engine and the others ran into the same 2 losers from earlier. The wannabes instantly got salty when they saw Remlin holding the brush. They whined to the mayor, demanding how he could possibly let a brat like her inherit the spellcaster role. One even bragged about winning a famous art competition, claiming that made him more worthy than some snot-nosed kid. The mayor wasn't having any of it. He unleashed his inner drill sergeant, shouting them down and reminding them that posers chasing fame had no clue what it truly meant to be a spellcaster. Then he ordered them to scram, because no one in Canvas City wanted to see their ugly mugs anyway. Thoroughly roasted, the thugs slinked off in defeat. Engine chuckled and remarked that the mayor was as terrifying as ever when angry, then jokingly advised him to stay away from the gate for the sake of his blood pressure. With that, everyone piled into the car. Rudo thanked Remlin for drawing on him, and she smugly promised she'd swing by HQ soon to mess around some more. As Engine drove them away, he hinted at a treat before they got back to base. Rudo had no clue what he meant until they rolled into a warehouse brimming with glorious trash. Fully intact devices stacked everywhere like treasures waiting to be claimed. Rudo practically started drooling as he dove into the junk heap, rummaging for the best pieces to repair and reuse. Engine just stood back and grinned, seeing firsthand how obsessed Rudo was with garbage. Neither of them noticed, though, that on top of the pile, a small TV flickered to life, showing a vision of a man wearing gloves eerily similar to Rudo's. When Rudo and the others returned to headquarters, they were immediately greeted by a weirdo shouting, "It's complete." Rudo had no clue who this guy was or what he was even talking about. Before anyone could clarify, the receptionist mommy mentioned she had heard about Gob's passing. But she barely got the words out before the crazy guy interrupted, proudly announcing that Rudo's mask was finished. At that point, Engine introduced him as August, the one who handled their gear. Because he was an artist, Engine added, he was also a little unhinged. August went on and on about how his latest creation was absolutely perfect. He bragged that even though he had never met Rudo, he had secretly measured his face while he was asleep, then learned all about his personality from Engine and the others. Rudo was horrified. August had entered his room to measure his face while he slept. The lunatic just laughed it off, saying Rudo was lucky he hadn't locked his door. Rio chimed in, joking that since Rudo rarely slept at all, it was already a miracle August caught him napping. Just then, the timid nurse from before rushed up, scolding August for embarrassing her in front of everyone. To Rudo's shock, the eccentric artist and the shy nurse were siblings, something he could hardly wrap his head around. With that chaos behind them, the group finally prepared to leave on their mission. Once outside, Engine told Rudo to remove his choker. Confused, He did as instructed, and then watched in disbelief as every member of the team cut their fingers and smeared blood on his choker. To Rudo, it looked like some bizarre devilish ritual. Engine explained that their chokers were communication devices, allowing them to talk to other cleaners who shared blood with them. Rudo asked if this was why everyone on the surface wore chokers, and Rio confirmed, saying it basically worked like a telephone. She added that exchanging blood had strong ride or die vibes, which she thought was awesome. Rudo, still skeptical, wondered what kind of technology powered it, or if it was another ability granted by the givers. His thoughts were cut short when he noticed everyone glaring at him, reminding him that his blood also had to be added to the mix. Terrified, he reluctantly complied. With the ritual complete, the group set out toward the no man's land, where they hoped to find a woman who knew about the barrier. Rudo had stuffed the car full of the garbage he'd salvaged earlier, but Engine warned him most of it would be useless since they'd have to travel on foot. Rudo stubbornly insisted that backup tools were always necessary. You never knew when a piece of trash could save your life. Eventually, they arrived at the Penta Desert, one of the 5 no man's lands. Its red dunes stretched as far as the eye could see. Tame was the first to slide down, scooping up the crimson sand only to realize it wasn't sand at all, it was rust. Just then, a massive trash beast charged toward them at terrifying speed. Engine quickly decided it was the perfect chance for Rudo's first real hunt as a cleaner. Rudo slid down the slope, donning his brand new mask, while the team's female supporters stood ready, already scribbling notes on the creature for their records. Rio decides to take on 3 scorpion-type trash beasts at once, slicing them up with her giant scissors. One severed body part rolls away and smacks into another beast, which immediately assumes Zanka is the culprit since he's standing right there. The monster charges at him, forcing Zanka to keep dodging until he spots the perfect opening. With a swift strike, he smashes its jaw and activates his staff's hidden power, shooting spikes straight through the creature's head. It drops instantly, but more monsters surround him before he can even breathe. Just as things look bad, Engine dives in with one of his signature moves, wiping out nearly all the beasts in one go. Only one remains, and Rudo steps up to prove himself. He whips out a keyboard. Yes, really? Somewhere in the distance, a mysterious woman notices his power awaken. Back in the fight, Rudo channels his inner keyboard warrior, the kind Twitter activists dream of being, though he still types like someone's 90-year-old grandma. But once he hits enter, the keys float up, fire down like bullets, and spell out the word hole across the scorpion's back before it crumbles to ash. With the monsters gone, Engine begins digging into the trash hidden under the rust-red sands. Meanwhile, Grease scolds their other supporter for taking notes during the fight instead of focusing on survival. She brushes him off, saying if she doesn't jot things down immediately, she'll just forget later. Rudo, meanwhile, is wiping dirt off his mask when he spots a fleeting image of a woman in the dust clouds. Before he can approach, Delman and Tame appear, startling him so badly that he falls flat when Delman bellows in his ear. Rudo feels somewhat proud of surviving his first fight, until Delman suddenly goes quiet, staring ahead. Rudo turns, and sees a cheerful girl casually strolling toward them. Delman and Tame tense up. She's not dressed for the harsh desert, and they hadn't even sensed her presence. The rest of the group gathers, and Engine wonders aloud if she might be the rumored woman who has seen people descend from the sphere and return. Zanka insists it's too soon to find her, but Engine suggests they at least ask for directions. Rio, ever the blunt one, directly asks the girl if she's ever seen people come from the sphere or go back. The girl nods, and Rio declares they've found exactly who they came for. Engine calls it sheer luck. Right before the girl, Almu, starts coughing, she invites them to her home to talk, warning that the air out here isn't good for them. Rio grows suspicious and asks Engine if she should go alone, but Engine decides everyone should come along. If it's a trap, better to face it together. Unfortunately, his plan backfires spectacularly. Once they reach Almu's house, stuffed with soft toys and creepy dolls, Engine suddenly collapses, vomiting. Rudo, the only one still conscious, tries to make sense of it all. Then Almu grins mischievously at him, and things are about to get worse.